The Eagles won the Super Bowl. Dan, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Monday Afternoon Journal Club. Ed Bowder and Dan Schwester from the Overrun here. Danny, how was your weekend?
Pretty good. Better than Harrison Butker's, better than Patrick Mahomes's, better than Travis Kelce's even. I'm kind of happy.
Exactly. I enjoyed the sporting events this evening, or yesterday evening, tried to keep it pretty low key. Go Birds! Go Birds!
Yeah.
Just checking out the game, just trying to see, what happened. There was a lot of interest in the game, so I was happy to watch it. But this week we're going to go into a study that came out of some college in New Haven, Connecticut. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I think the name of the school is Yale. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, it's a little west of Providence.
Yeah, it's just a little bit outside the city. So this is out of Yale University School of Medicine and Wake Forest School of Medicine. And we talked about pre-hospital ultrasound and the actual efficacy and whether or not we can teach paramedics to use it to identify congestive heart failure. So Danny, let's get into this. What happened here is this is more of a feasibility study, and this came out in 2021, where it was more what they're looking to find in this paper was, can paramedics be taught how to find what are called curly bee lines in ultrasound, which are pathognomonic for congestive heart failure. So really what this paper looked at was, we have pre-hospital ultrasound available and we have providers who can do it. Let's teach them how to do this one very specific thing, and let's see how the providers react. So what do we have in here, Dan? What did we find, and what do you like about this?
Well, I'm going to leave you to get into the nuts and bolts because it's kind of an interesting study, and it's a little bit underpowered. It's kind of a small study. We'll get into the stats, but I thought this was a really important first step in broadening the paramedic scope of practice and getting a diagnostic tool in that can really make a difference in your pre-hospital CHF patients. We all know that undifferentiated respiratory distress is a tough diagnosis even for an experienced medic. What the idea of the ultrasound, using portable ultrasound, POCUS, whatever you want to call it, is putting the probe on their chest, taking a look at their lungs and seeing if those lungs have fluid in them or if they don't have fluid in them. And it's pretty easy to do. We've had Devin Dromgoole on to talk about this. You and I have done ultrasound training in the past, and it's not a hard thing to do, but I think it's a hard concept for people to take and wrap their head around, the idea of a paramedic, slapping an ultrasound probe on somebody's chest and making a decision about care. Especially in a lot of places, you've seen one EMS system. Some places are very progressive. Some places are not very progressive. So this was a study to see, hey, could they actually do it and give you a basis or a background so that you could do more research on your own. One of the things I thought was very interesting was the participation in this study. The other part was they did acknowledge how hard it really is to do pre-hospital research and how to keep people interested in doing research. So I thought maybe you go into the nuts and bolts of the study, give the stats, and then we could come back and work it out. So go ahead and give it your shot.
Yeah, so what the study looked at was essentially, and we talked about it as a feasibility analysis, and what they wanted to talk about was, if we give 2 hours of training to pre-hospital providers, to paramedics, will they be able to reasonably identify curly bee lines during ultrasound to try and differentiate CHF out of nothing else? What I thought was interesting as we were looking through this, so they had 63 paramedics complete the didactic and hands-on training, 22 performed ultrasound in the field. So the first thing, and again, we're trying to differentiate the signal from the noise here. And I think the first thing that's interesting in this is that that's almost a 66% reduction.
Yeah.
So the first thing is
almost 2/3 of the paramedics that were trained in this study didn't do an ultrasound.
So that, I think that's an interesting point, where I think that's where you have to start thinking about, like, okay, is the problem with that we're adding new skills without, backing up? Are we adding more responsibility to providers? There has to be another probably
Is it a
cultural
cultural
underlying
thing?
read.
Yeah.
There has to be something else for people that don't do it. Because certainly in the field, we all have those things where like, you know what, I know that the right thing to do for this patient is X, but we're 10 minutes from the hospital, so I'm going to do Y. And that, again, that's a more like identity and culture thing that you really have to dig into. And there's too much to do in this paper. So I think that's the first thing, is that you already have this kind of built-in attrition when we first do this study. So that's the first thing that I think as an industry we need to address, right? If we're able to teach these medics in 2 hours how to positively, assess for B-lines and congestive heart failure, why do 2/3 not do that then? So that being said, where we have medics that just don't do the thing, the specificity and sensitivity for this is really, really good.
Oh yeah,
Like
absolutely.
this is one of those skills where if you run a POCUS, if you run an ultrasound on a patient and you see B-lines, that's congestive heart failure. That's just what it is. And again, we have talked about this previously with other physicians, where it's just putting a probe onto a patient, and it's specifically one type of line that you're looking at. And we've talked about this previously, but I mean, it's a 2-hour class of this is what B-lines look like, this is what B-lines don't look like, and that can help guide the care and guide the treatment for these patients. So what I think is frustrating when data sets like this come out is, again, we have another thing where here's something that works. Here's something that can positively affect change. Here's something that can get patients better, get them out of the hospital. All the things that we keep talking about, what we want to do, changing pre-hospital medicine, right? Like actually turning pre-hospital medicine into medicine, as opposed to, throw them in the back of the bus and go to the hospital. So the first thing that this paper says to me is that we already have a problem of getting providers to learn something and then apply it in the field, right? We already have that problem.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the first bucket that we have to address. Then after we address that, now we can move into, okay, and we can also do this extra skill set, right? So I think that the simple analysis is POCUS works for differentiating dyspnea or for finding congestive heart failure in the field. But if we don't use it, then what's the point? This kind of argument harkens back to when we started doing 12 leads in the field. And when I say we, I mean like 12 leads have been done in the field since the 70s. But when they got really popular in the 90s and 2000s, we had the same discussion. Like, well, I don't have time to run a 12 lead, right? I was here
for this.
Like, I had to get them to the hospital. Yep. And it was a facile argument then too, right? But but now it kind of feels like, well, yeah, I could do that, but you know what? I'm going to be in the hospital in 7 minutes anyway. I might as well just let the hospital fix them.
Yeah, I didn't learn 12 leads in medic school. I learned them in the field as we adopted 12 leads. I trained on a Life Pack 10, and we didn't do 12 leads. We did modified chest leads. And oddly enough, there were people that thought that was just fine, and they didn't need to do the extra stuff. Now we know that 12 leads are standard of care. We know that they make a difference in outcomes, and we know they make a difference, especially in ACS or STEMI, OMI, whatever you're calling it this week. I thought what was really interesting from this study was 2/3 of the medics that were enrolled in the study did not do an ultrasound. Out of the 1/3 that was left, only about half of them actually did more than one ultrasound, which just goes to show you how good this test really is. It's almost like they tried to screw themselves as hard as possible with this study, and it still showed that it worked.
It still worked.
And it still worked. It was, it was like, it's like the Rasputin of, of medical literature, in that we shot it, we buried it, we dug it, like Drake and Kendrick, just dig them up and kill them again. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. It's as effective as letting your franchise running back go to your division rival.
Very good. Yes, absolutely.
So what I think, and we talk about this every week, right? So one of the nice things that I do like about this paper, immediately in the end, it talks about more research is needed. We need to, better studies are needed for all this stuff. One of the things I like about feasibility analyses like these is it just simply put, like, the study isn't asking, how good are medics at doing this, right? Or how good are EMTs doing it. what it does is, and again, this is a convenient sample. It's a fairly small N, but it was really more like, can we do the thing?
Yeah.
Right. If you give me 2 hours, can I teach a medic to differentiate CHF from COPD using point of care ultrasound? That's really all it was.
Right.
Right. It was more like a yes or no. Right.
Yeah.
How likely is it that we can do this? So what I like about it is that there is a lot to build off of. Right. And maybe the answer from this study is, okay, you're never going to get 100% of anything. Right. Like we're not going to get that. But instead of having 0 people running ultrasound, maybe having that 32, 33% is better than nothing.
Right.
Right. Because again, you got to start somewhere.
Okay.
So I like what they went through. I kind of like hopefully where this discussion is going. Right. Because of that, where like, okay, so now we know that this probably works. Right. So there's more data that has to be built off of this. But I do like the methodology. I like that they at least explored this. And again, this paper is from 2021. So there's definitely research that's ongoing to kind of build off of this. But I did want to bring this up where, at least to start a discussion, right? Where, all right, you're going to go out into the field. You're not sure if this undifferentiated dyspnea is whatever, CHF, COPD, a PE, pneumonia, whatever. Point of care ultrasound is one of those tests that you can take 30 seconds and actually positively affect patient care.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because this is the thing that we talk about, right? Like, all right, well, what can we do in the field that actually makes a tangible difference?
Right.
And point of care ultrasound is one of those things, right? That you can go in, train for 2 hours, find out if it's fluid or if it's actually an obstruction, take them to the hospital, right? It's just one of those little, like, extra little things.
And also set the right treatment right at the beginning so it continues through the ED up to the floor. This maybe is a person that doesn't go to the ICU. This is maybe a person that doesn't go on BiPAP. They go on, non-rebreather or a venti mask, whatever. And this is where pre-hospital medicine is dropping the ball. We have these things that we show when we intervene in certain areas, we make a positive difference. We're just not trumpeting that to the rest of the world. It's kind of annoying. It's kind of maddening. I'd love to talk to the study designers and kind of see like why they weren't interested in this. I'm sure it's we were only 5 minutes from the hospital. I don't have time for this. All the other silly arguments that we've had for years. And they're the same people on the message boards and on the internet, by the way, who are screaming that they don't get paid enough and that they're just like nurses and doctors and they need more respect. And I'm going to sit here and say, hey, look, you can't have that respect unless you show that you're ready for it. And we have to be ready for it. And here was a perfect opportunity. I think ultrasound's the future. I love it. I think it's going to work great. I think we need to get behind it. It's the 12 leads of the 2020s. But dang, you got to be willing to give it a try.
And that's one of the bigger problems, right? Is that we have to be willing to accept change and we have to be willing to be dynamic when we actually, have treatments that work. And again, I would be interested to see a pre-hospital like number needed to treat for POCUS, right? Like just to finally have that answer. But what I think is important here is it's not asking, does it improve outcomes? Right? Which usually when we talk about journal, like, okay, well, how does this improve patient care? How does it improve turnover? Do they get discharged? Are they better? Whatever.
Sure.
What this was, this paper, and one of the authors of the paper is David Cohn. He's one of the Eagles with Paul Pepe and all those people. So again, not amateurs, right? These are people who do EMS research. And I like that they were just like, all right, you know what? This is a shout out to like systems people. Right. This study isn't for academics who want to see like, oh, okay, well, so I've got 83.9% sensitivity here. Right. That's not what this is.
No.
This is, we're not doing this. We're going to train you to do it. Now do it. Let's see if it works.
And it worked.
Right? And it worked. That's really all this is. So when we talk about how to
it worked, remember, even when the majority of the people enrolled in the study didn't try to make it work.
Yeah, exactly. It worked despite ourselves.
How totally EMS.
Right, exactly. Here's something good that works. Like, no, I'm going to set it on fire first. I want to make sure it's resilient. But when you're looking through these studies and trying to get an idea on how medicine changes, studies like this are kind of what helps implement change. First, identifying a problem and then seeking to see how we can actually address it. But we want to know what you guys think. Let us know what you think about this journal article and anything else. Check us out on the rest of our YouTube stuff, EMS1, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all that other stuff. For the Monday Afternoon Journal Club, Ed Bowder and Dan Schwester, we will talk to you all next week. Go Birds.